everyone, welcome to another live stream. I'm so glad that you guys are here.
Hi, how's it going?
Good, how are you doing today?
We're doing pretty good.
Yeah? Well, what have you guys been up to?
Well, this week we went over to a friend's house. And while we were there, our friend asked if we wanted to watch this movie. And we remembered that we weren't supposed to watch this movie and that it's not very good. My parents said not to watch it.
Oh, well, what did you end up doing?
Well, we explained it to him, and he said maybe another time. He said that a lot of other people watch it, so why can't we?
Well, today we're going to learn a story. Mr. Nick, do you want to come up today?
Yes.
Do you want to tell a little bit about what our story today is going to be?
So we're going to learn about Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, and how they told the king that they would not bow down to his big idol, and how they were thrown into the fiery furnace because of that.
All right, so we're going to go ahead and get started.
Okay, well, are you guys ready to sing a little bit tonight? Because I sure am. And one of my favorite books to sing out of is the Bible. Did you know there's a lot of songs in the Bible? Well, tonight we're going to be singing from one of the songs there, and it's in Psalms chapter 89, verse 1. So if you want to go read that later, you certainly can. But it's about singing the mercies of God. So I hope you'll sing with me. And the words will be there on your screen if you want to follow along. So sing loud because Jesus likes to hear you sing. I will sing of the mercies of the Lord forever. I will sing. I will sing. I will sing of the mercies of the Lord forever. I will sing of the mercies of the Lord. With my mouth will I make known his faithfulness, and with my mouth will I make known his faithfulness to all generations. I will sing of the mercies of the Lord forever. I will sing. I will sing. I will sing of the mercies of the Lord forever. I will sing of the mercies of the Lord. Okay. Did you enjoy singing about the mercies of God? Is there anything in your life that you are thankful to God for? Perhaps it was supper tonight, or maybe mom made really good breakfast, maybe waffles or pancakes. So there's always something to praise God about. Okay. Our theme song for the last few weeks has been Dare to be a Daniel, and that's because we've been studying about Daniel and his friends and everything that God has blessed them with during their time in Babylon. And we'll hear another good story tonight. But I hope you'll sing Dare to be a Daniel with me. Standing by a purpose true, heeding God's command, honor them but faithful few, all hail to Daniel's band. Dare to be a Daniel, dare to stand to be a Daniel. Dare to stand alone. Dare to have a purpose for harm. Dare to make it known.
Okay, boys and girls, I have another true story for you. This one happened a long time ago, and this happened to Daniel's friends, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. You see, one day, the King Nebuchadnezzar, was standing up on his balcony, I imagine, looking out over his kingdom, and he got to thinking how wonderful his kingdom was and how special he was for building such an amazing kingdom. And he turned to his servant beside him, I think, and he said, "Isn't this a wonderful kingdom? Maybe the best that's ever been?" And the servant said, "Oh, yes, King, the best that's ever been." And the king thought about that, and he remembered his dream that he had, the one that Daniel told him about, the one with the big image of a man. And he remembered how the head was supposed to represent his kingdom, and it was made of gold. But you see, he got very proud in his heart, and he thought, "I know what I'll do. I want the whole thing to be of gold, the whole man, not just the head. I'm going to make a statue of the dream that I dreamed, and it's going to be made of all gold." And he turned to his servant. He says, "Servant, I want you to go gather all the artists and all the craftsmen, and I want them to build me a statue just like I dreamed about. And I want the whole thing to be of gold. And not only that, I want it to be big too, like 100 feet tall. That's really tall." So he got all the craftsmen together in the kingdom, and they built him his statue. And he said, "Ah, yes, this is a wonderful statue, a wonderful one. It even looks like me." So he was looking at his statue, and he thought, "I know what I'll do. Just so everybody recognizes how good I am, I'm going to have them all come, all the important people of my kingdom, all the officials and governors and everyone come and worship the statue that looks like me." So the word went out that all the officials in King Nebuchadnezzar's kingdom were supposed to come and have a big celebration. So everybody came and gathered together in front of this big statue. And the messenger said that when all the musical instruments played, when the music played, everybody was supposed to drop to the ground and bow before this idol statue and worship it. Now, that was terrible news, because everyone that was a Jew knew that we were only to worship God in heaven. We don't worship idols. Idols are just made by people's hands, but the God in heaven, he's alive, and he is the only one that we are to worship. Well, some of the friends of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego knew that they weren't going to bow down to this idol. And they said, "Shadrach, Meshach, Abednego, what are you going to do when you're supposed to bow down when the music plays? You're not going to bow down, are you?" And they said, "Nope, we cannot bow down to this idol. It's not the true God in heaven." And their friend said, "I know what you should do. You know, the king, he's serious about throwing people into the fiery furnace when they don't do what he says. We've seen it happen before. It's not pretty. You don't want to end up like that. I have a plan for you. When the music plays, you just bend over and tighten your sandal straps. You won't have to bow down to the idol. You'll just be tightening your straps, but nobody will ever know that you're not worshiping the idol when the music plays." And they looked at their friends, and just shook their heads. We cannot bow down. We can't even pretend to bow down. We must worship only the true God in heaven. Well, they had a big dilemma, but they made a decision to stay firm and be true to their beloved God who is in heaven, and worship only him. Well, in just a few minutes, the music began to play, and it was big and loud, and the music played and everyone was supposed to bow down. And wouldn't you know, everyone in that big crowd bowed down to worship the idol except Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. And for a moment they thought, well, maybe the king changed his mind. Maybe he saw who we are, and we know the king. He knows that we won't bow down to this idol. Well, I'm sorry to say that there was some tattletales in that crowd, and they went up to the king saying, "Oh, king, live forever. Remember how you said that everyone was to bow down and worship the idol when the music played? Oh, there's 3 men out there that aren't doing what you said, oh king. Look out there. They're standing. They're not bowing before the idol, before the statue that you made." And the king got very angry and he said, What? 3 men not worshiping my image? Oh, bring them to me. I'll show them. So those messengers went out and they grabbed Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego and brought them before the king. And the king saw them and recognized them and said, "Oh, it's Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego." And he said to them, "Young men, from the day that I brought you to Babylon, you've served me well. Perhaps you didn't hear that when the music played, you were supposed to bow down and worship my image. I'll give you a second chance. Make sure when the music plays this time, you fall down and worship it. Otherwise, the fiery furnace awaits you. What are you going to do?" And Shadrach spoke up for his friends there, and he said, "O king," he said very calmly, "live forever, O king. I know that your words are true, but we cannot bow down and worship this idol that you have made. We worship only the true God in heaven. And no matter what happens, he is able to save us from your fiery furnace. But even if he doesn't, we will still only worship the true God in heaven. Be what it may, even if you have to send us to the furnace, we will not bow down." And that made King Nebuchadnezzar furious. His veins on his neck popped out. His face turned red, and he stood tall and shook his fist at the 3 friends. He said, "You will worship, otherwise you are into the fire." And they said, "I guess it's the fire, O king." He says, "Throw them in, but first make it 7 times hotter." And so his king's servants threw on more wood, and that furnace began to blaze hotter and hotter and hotter. And the people around it started to move back farther and farther because it was so hot. It was burning white hot. And the king says, "Throw them in." And several of the king's biggest, toughest, strongest, fiercest soldiers picked up these 3 young men, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, and took them as close as they could to the fire and tossed them right into the flames. What would happen next? Would Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego's God save them? What would happen? Well, the soldiers threw the 3 friends into the fire, they themselves, the soldiers, fell down dead because the fire was too hot. Well, the king stood watching into the flames, and he looked and he said, "Wait a minute. Didn't we throw 3 young men into the flames?" "Oh, yes, king. 3 young men. Live forever, O king." "But I see 4. Does everybody else see 4 people in those flames?" "Oh, yes, king. There's 4. And the king said, "But one of them looks like the Son of God. He's brighter and more brilliant than the flames that are around them." And you know what? All 4 men in the flames are walking around as if they weren't being burned or tortured. They're walking around like they're having a good time in there. What could be happening? Bring the men out. Bring them out and over to me. Well, the Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, they heard the king, and they came walking out of the flames and right up to the king. And the king said, "Oh, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, look at you. You're not burned. Your hair isn't even singed. You don't even smell like smoke. How could this be? Truly, the God that you worship is the true God. And if anyone ever says anything against your God, I will cut them up into little tiny pieces and make their house into a pile of ashes. Your God is amazing. We must worship your God. Well, boys and girls, that is quite an amazing story. And I just love the fact that when the three friends stayed true and honored God, honored God's commands and were obedient to God, God himself came and stood in the midst of them, right in the midst of those flames. And surprisingly, the only thing that burned while they were in the fire was the ropes around their wrists and feet. Only the ropes burned, not their clothes, not their hair, not even their skin. And so that tells me that God loves us. When we're obedient to him, he comes and helps us in our most hard circumstances that we face. And the only thing that falls away is when we face the fire, is the things that keep us bound to this earth. And God will call us home to heaven with him one day. God is with you no matter what circumstance you face, good, bad, or terrible, like these three friends faced the fire. But you know what? Out of it all, those three friends, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, the king decided that they should get a promotion, and they got even more responsibilities and rewards for being faithful to God. That's my story, friends. I hope you will be faithful to God and obey him, just like Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego did.
Okay. There we go. Now, just like Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego were witnesses to Nebuchadnezzar and the people of Babylon, we can be witnesses to those around us. We can be Jesus' light to shine in our world. So we're going to sing Jesus Bids Us Shine. Jesus bids us shine with a clear, pure light, like a little candle burning in the night. In this world of darkness, we must shine. You in your small corner and I in mine. Jesus bids us shine. There's all for him. When he sees and knows it, if our light is dim, he looks down from heaven, sees us shine. You in your small corner and I in mine. Jesus bids us shine as we work for him, bringing those who wander from a path of sin. He will ever help us if we shine. You in your small corner and I in mine. And God does all of that because he loves us and he wants to do good for us. So I hope you'll sing this last song with me that just reminds us of how good God is. God is so good. God is so good. God is so good. He's so good to me. He died for me. He died for me.
All right, boys and girls, I have a question for you. Coming out of a story like that, let me see you raise your hands. I can't see you, but raise your hands if you've ever been in a fiery furnace. Like you've been in there and you've felt those flames and you did something like Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. No? No one ever been in the flames like that? Well, maybe we haven't had a literal opportunity, and word opportunity is probably the wrong choice there, to be in a furnace like Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. But guess what? Each and every one of us kind of has been in a fiery furnace. And the question that I want to ask you tonight is, how do you respond to those fiery furnaces? What am I talking about? I'm talking about those difficult things that happen in your life. Whether it was in school or whether it was even this year that school looked different, or whether it is a bad day with your friends and things weren't going very well. Those are fiery furnaces because they have an impact on us. It makes us to respond in different ways. I've got a few things here with me that I'd like to bring to your attention about, things that can remind us or help us to think about how we respond to fire, how we respond to the fiery furnace of difficulties in our lives. So last week was real fire. This week we're going to talk about the effects of fire. Didn't want to bring another fiery experiment to you literally. But what do I have in my hand here? This is a good old carrot. All right? It's a good old carrot. Now, you probably have one of these or many of these in the fridge at home, or you have some maybe planted outside in the garden. You know what a carrot feels like, don't you? It's pretty hard and kind of rough on the outside until you peel off the rough part of it. But it's a pretty tough little vegetable here. What happens to this when you put this in water and then turn the fire on under the water? And, over time, what do you think happens to the carrot? The carrot's no longer hard, is it? It begins to get soft. If you leave it long enough, it's pretty squishy, in fact. And if you leave it even longer than that, it might even begin to dissolve in the water. But it no longer keeps that initial way that it was, the first way it was, which was very strong and rough and hard and stuff like that. So maybe sometimes we go into the situations in our lives and we feel like we're nice and strong and tough, like a nice little carrot. And when we get in there, the fire of the circumstance that we're in turns us kind of feeble and weak, and we're afraid, and we kind of pine away and maybe start to feel like we're dissolving like the carrot that's in the fiery water for too long. Well, that's a carrot. So a carrot does respond to fiery trials. How do you respond to it? Got another little thing here for you. What's this one? This is an egg. This is an egg. Now, on the outside, the egg looks pretty tough. Doesn't have a hard shell on it. But what happens if I squish this in my hands right now? I'm not going to do it. I promise I won't, for my own good. But what's on the inside of this is pretty soft and mushy, right? On the inside. It just has a very thin outer shell that's not really as strong throughout as a carrot. It's really delicate, this egg is. And sometimes we go into the situations in our lives kind of delicate as well. Maybe we might be a little sensitive to this or that. And we go into the situation and then the fire gets turned on, right? And we're right in the middle of that heat. Now, what happens when I put this in boiling water, the water that's being heated up by fire? What is inside begins to harden up, right? You call this a hard-boiled egg for a reason, because what's inside starts to harden. And maybe that happens to us too. Maybe sometimes we go in and we're a little sensitive here and there. We might be keenly aware of this or that. And as we go through the fire, well, it just turns out to harden our spirits and we become very cold toward one another. And we just harden up on the inside. Our hearts become almost like Ezekiel talks about hearts of stone. We're going to call it hearts like a hard-boiled egg in this illustration. Well, I have another little, at first it was a plant, but now it's all mushed up and it's inside a little bag here. And I'm going to ask you to think about this for a moment. This is something that also reacts to heat. in a very distinct way. This is a tea bag. So at one point, this was a nice looking green plant with mint. They called mint, and they crushed it up and it became a little tea bag here for us, but it still is good for our illustration. I want to see what happens to a tea bag. Does it get soft like the carrot? Does it get hard like the egg? What happens to a tea bag? Now, I brought down some hot water here. This water spent some time over the fire, so it's still pretty nice and hot. And I want to see what happens to the tea bag. So there we've got some water. We're going to put that tea bag in there. This is us again thinking about how we might react to fiery circumstances. So in the hot water, the tea bag goes. Now, you might not see this the way I'm seeing it. And I even made a mistake here. This wasn't the mint one. This is another one. This is a different kind of tea bag. Look at the color here on this, guys. It's not mint, is that? Can you see it? I don't even know if you can see it very well. Oh, there you go. You probably can see that. Yeah. See, it's beginning to have a little color there. And, well, what's changing really in the water? Can you see the bag? Does it kind of look the same? Does the water also look the same, though? The water is changing, isn't it? The water is turning into the color that the tea bag was. And here we have something that doesn't look very clear anymore. Now the water's starting to look red, right? So that actually showed me the truth of what this bag was about. I thought it was mint, but the fiery furnace showed me the real nature of this bag, and it started to tell us the truth about itself. And this bag actually has some nice red goodies inside of it, and it is spreading that flavor and that color out into the environment around it. Isn't that cool? That's what happens over time with heat, or can happen over time with heat. So we have a choice to make. Maybe you don't have to ever be in a fiery furnace just like Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego were, but each and every day as we go through the difficulties of our lives, when we have the fiery challenges that we go through, we have a choice to make. It's a three-part choice, boys and girls. Am I going to be like a carrot? Let me hold it up again for you. Am I going to be like a carrot? Am I going to be like this egg over here? Or am I going to be like this tea bag? Now, am I going to let the circumstances around me soften me and make me fear and pine away? Am I going to make the circumstances around me harden me so I no longer care about anybody? Or am I going to allow the circumstances around me not to impact me, but through Jesus Christ, I can impact the circumstances around me, and I can show kindness, and I can show love, and I can show those true colors that Jesus Christ puts inside of us. Remember that story you heard a while ago? The king was benefited by what he saw in the furnace, right? It was because of what he saw. It wasn't the fire impacting the boys. It was the fire through the boys and through Jesus Christ impacting the king, the circumstances around the furnace. So that's something for us to keep in mind, boys and girls. Don't be like a carrot. Don't be like an egg. Be like that tea bag or that mint leaf or something that can be delicious in water. When you put it in that heat, in that hard circumstance, it just says, you know what? I've got so much good in me. I'm just going to let it flow right on out. I'm going to shine this light for Jesus, and I'm going to make a positive difference in my world. God bless you, boys and girls, as you seek to make a difference even in the difficult circumstances that you might find yourselves in. We're going to wrap this up now, and we'll see you again next time.
All right, guys, where are you? There you are. All right, you were very close to the camera there. So did you guys learn something from that story that we heard?
I learned that when we do what God wants us to do, we make a difference with other people, and He blesses us.
Yeah. Did you guys have a favorite part?
I really liked the part of the story where they came out of the fiery furnace and only the ropes were burned off of them, and how they didn't even smell like smoke.
Yeah, it's really cool, isn't it?
Yeah.
Well, earlier today you were telling me about a movie that you knew you weren't supposed to watch that your friend had asked you to.
Yeah.
Well, did this story help you know what to do?
Yeah. Now we know that we should tell him that we shouldn't watch it, and in doing that, just like the tea bag, we can make a difference.
Yeah. All right, Mr. Nick, do you want to come on up here and we can do our closing prayer?
Yes. Dear Jesus, thank you for bringing us together online so that we could learn about the story of the fiery furnace. Please help us to have a good rest of our week and a happy Sabbath. We love you. Amen.
Thanks so much for joining us, guys. We'll see you next week.
Bye.
Bye.